In this video, I'll go over 10 of the best cards who have effects that only work in the battle phase and aren't commonly used today. That doesn't mean they aren't used at all, it's just they're not very popular when compared to more meta cards. And at number 10, we have Dark Sanctuary. Now, this card has some effects which combo with Destiny board, but it's not on this list for that. It has a secondary effect, where if your opponent declares an attack, you can flip a coin. If heads, the attack is stopped, and your opponent takes damage to the life points equal to half the attack of the monster. And if tails, the attack goes through and you don't take any kind of penalty. This is one of the few gamble cards in the game that doesn't have a negative effect on loss. So, while this field spell card is out, your opponent only has a 50% chance of actually being able to attack you with each of its monsters, and taking some pretty nice effect damage if their attack doesn't go through. And there's no cost to pay for this effect, and you don't even have to use any kind of Spirit Message or Destiny board cards in your deck to run this field spell card. Now, the reason this card isn't ran more often is because any decent deck worth its salt has many ways of getting rid of the card before entering the battle phase. Plus, the whole nature that it is a gamble effect does lessen its usefulness somewhat. But the fact that it's a continuous gamble effect that's always active does make it a somewhat decent battle phase card that no one uses. Number 9, Rebellion. This card allows you to take control of one monster your opponent controls, but only during the battle phase. And if you take control of the monster during your battle phase, you can only attack with that monster that turn. So you can't just use it to steal a monster during the battle phase and attack with all your other monsters for a game. But you can use it to take your opponent's strongest monster, and then use it to attack one of your opponent's other strong monsters, I guess. Honestly, the best use of this card is to just steal your opponent's strongest card during their turn to stop the battle phase. Or in a deck that can use the monster during the battle phase, like Shadow's with El Shadow Fusion. Its ability to steal monsters during your turn as well should be seen more as an added bonus option than the main function of the card. Number 8, Tragoedia. This card actually saw a ton of play back in the day, and was even on the ban list for a few years at semi-limited, but it doesn't see any play today really. Now this card has like 4 effects, so to summarize them all real quick, if you take battle damage, you can special summon this card from your hand. Its attack and defense is 600 times the number of cards in your hand. Once per turn, you can change the level of this card to the level of a monster in your graveyard. Also once per turn, you can discard a monster in your hand to take control of a monster your opponent controls with the same level as that discarded monster. So it's pretty versatile, and its level manipulation effect made it perfect in the Xseeds era. And its ability to special summon itself after taking battle damage can be used after all of your opponent's monsters have attacked for a monster on the field for your next turn to be used in combo plays, or used after an attack in order to get a monster on board to help prevent further damage. This card is like the poster boy for a versatile card that can do a lot of different things, and there's a reason why it was semi-limited on the ban list for as long as it was. Number 7, Rainbow KURIBOH. This card is one of the few KURIBOH cards to actually see competitive play, although it's not really used anymore. This card has 2 effects. The first being, if your opponent declares an attack, you can equip this card from your hand to that monster to prevent that monster from being able to attack permanently as long as this card is equipped to it. Its second effect is if your opponent's monster declares a direct attack while this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card to basically block that attack, but then it's banished when removed from the field. So this one card can potentially block 2 attacks, one from the hand and one from the graveyard, which makes it real hard for your opponent to stop, since you never really have to put it on the field normally to gain its attack blocking effects. And the fact that one of its effects shuts down a monster basically permanently makes this card a real good attack stopper. Number 6, World Legacy World Lance. This card is a hand trap that has the effect where if a Link monster battles a monster, you can discard this card to have your opponent's monster lose 3000 attack. So if you control a Link monster, you can attack into anything you want and activate this card. Or if you just control any other type of monster and then attack into a Link monster, you can use this card, basically allowing you to attack over any Link monster, as there's only one Link monster in the game with a base attack of over 3000. which means it's going to lower 99% of Link monsters' attacks to 0. And with how pretty much every deck uses Link monsters, this card is almost always live. This card does also have other effects that aren't used as often. If you do manage to bring this card on the field, it protects other World Legacy monsters from attacks. And it has another effect, where if a monster is special summoned from the extra deck, you can special summon a token to both players' sides of the field. It's not really used for these effects, and really only on this list for its battle phase effect, which is actually pretty decent. Number 5, Juragedo. This card can special summon itself during the battle phase, and if you do, you gain 1,000 life points. It also has a spell speed 2 effect to tribute itself to give one other monster you control 1,000 extra attack until the end of the next turn. Monsters which can generically special summon themselves from the hand without too much drawbacks are pretty good. The fact that this card is limited to the battle phase only is kind of a pretty big drawback to it though. It means it can only really be used in combo plays during the main phase too. But its attack gain effect being spell speed 2 makes it pretty viable in the battle phase, as you can enter the battle phase, special summon the card, attack with it, then tribute it to give another one of your monsters an attack boost. Or if you don't need the attack boost and you need to go into combo plays, you can just enter the battle phase and special summon it, and then go into your main phase 2 to continue your combos. While it's not as ideal not being able to use your battle phase, it is still some versatility that it does have. And this card actually saw lots of play when Cosmo cards came out for the first time, and they were all about getting Cosmo Farm Girl to attack over things as their main strategy. Number 4, Moon Mirror Shield. This is an equip card that has the effect where if the monster it's equipped to battles another monster, its attack and defense becomes equal to the attack and defense of your opponent's monster plus 100, depending on whichever is higher. Also, if this card on the field is sent to the graveyard, you pay 500 life points to send this card to either the top or bottom of your deck, basically allowing you to use it again on your next turn. With this card equipped to a monster, it can basically attack over anything, as it will always have 100 more attack than either the attack or defense of whatever it's crashing into. And that's why this is such a popular card in stall decks. So I guess technically, out of all the cards in this list, this one is kind of used. It's just stall decks aren't exactly super popular right now, so Moon Mirror Shield isn't all that popular by association. Number 3, Battle Fader. This card is a hand trap where if your opponent declares a direct attack, you can special summon this card from your hand to end the battle phase. And if this card is removed from the field when special summoned this way, it's banished instead. So basically, you get to end an entire battle phase and get a monster for Link plays on your next turn. This card is actually pretty good, and was used in a handful of decks in the past, like in some variants of Froggy Monarchs, since those decks couldn't use any trap cards to protect themselves. And they could use the Battle Fader as a tribute for a Monarch on their next turn. And the reason this card doesn't see any play today is just because battle stopping effects just aren't really used, and there are better battle phase cards in the game, but it makes it perfect for a high spot on this list. Number 2, Electromagnetic Turtle. This card has the effect where, during your opponent's battle phase, you can banish this card from the graveyard to end the battle phase. So, like Battle Fader, it can end a battle phase, but unlike Battle Fader, it doesn't need to be in your hand, just the graveyard. And since it's a light type monster, there are a lot of ways to send it to the graveyard easily, and it combos well with a lot of decks that love to send lots of monsters to the graveyard. And using a resource from your graveyard to stop a battle phase is just kind of a better effect than using a resource from your hand to stop a battle phase. But this card does have a once per duel limitation, although this doesn't really matter too much, as most games in modern Yu-Gi-Oh don't last very long, and it's most likely you wouldn't be using more than one of these cards' effects per duel anyway. And number 1, Gorz, the Emissary of Darkness. This card was on the ban list for a really long time, being put to limited almost immediately after it was released. In fact, if I'm remembering correctly, it's one of the few cards to be limited as soon as it was released, so it never had a time to shine at 3 copies when it first came out. Today though, this card is unlimited. You can play 3 copies of it in your deck, and no one uses it. This card's effect is pretty simple. If you take damage to your life points while you control no cards on your side of the field, you can special summon this card from your hand. And if you took effect damage, you can also inflict the same amount of effect damage to your opponent. But if you took battle damage, you can special summon a token who has the same attack and defense as the amount of battle damage you took. So with Gorz, you wanted to wait until your opponent attacked with the highest attack monster before using it from your hand to bring it out. That way you'd get a really strong token that the other monster your opponent controls couldn't beat over, and then you'd have 2 strong monsters in the field during your next turn. And because of Gorz, it became standard practice in Yu-Gi-Oh! To attack with your monsters from lowest to highest attack. In fact, I still attack with my lowest attack monsters first, and then my highest attack monsters last, on an empty board, because I was so used to almost every deck having Gorz back in the day. And it was just stupid to not attack in that order. Of course, nowadays that's not really a problem. You really don't have to worry about your opponent having Gorz in their hand, as even this once really powerful card has just been kind of power crept to the point where it's not all that useful. And that card in your hand could have been used for a combo extender to further your link plays, or for a hand trap that could have prevented your opponent from setting up their board. But because of this card's past notoriety, and its usefulness even today, I think it deserves the #1 spot. Alright, and that's the end of the video. Now, there are some battle phase exclusive effects that do see heavy use in the game today. Eater of Millions, Evenly Matched, and Borolo Dragon are 3 cards which have effects that are only usable in the battle phase that see tons of play. So it's not like battle phase cards are no longer used, it's just they have to be really good in order to be used. And if you know of any other really good battle phase cards that I didn't include on this list, because I did leave out some like Swift Scarecrow, because of the fact that it's very similar to Battle Fader, and the Mirror Force cards, because they do still see some niche play, I'd love to hear about them. Or if you have ideas for other videos similar to this one, just leave them down in the comments below.